Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Now, one thing I do have to mention, I did get a request in the comments through along in my Witch's Guide for me to make a first level, or at least a starting level-ish kind of character. Basically, they wanted me to do like a low-level witch build, what I think that would look like. Something sort of optimized, but still fun and full of a lot of flavor that's appropriate to the witch character class. And that will be coming. I'm debating on whether or not that's going to be turning into its own little video series, the Request a Build or something like that. But we'll get into that another time. As you've probably guessed from the title here, we are continuing on with the zombie apocalypse. And last time I'd posted one of these videos, I'd said next time around we were going to be talking about encounters. And that's exactly what I have in store for you here today. We are going to be discussing throwing different kinds of encounters at your players and different things you can do to kind of help set that up so that way you can keep things fun, interesting, and hopefully exciting all at the same time and build that level of tension, forcing your players to weigh out how much of their resources they want to expend in dealing with different combat encounters, as well as the potential rewards that could be yielded from such events. So let's go ahead and get right on down to it, shall we? Now, of course, for the zombie apocalypse, the stars of the show, aside from the players themselves, are going to be the zombies. Zombies, well, they're just such a classic monster. They're easy to throw in. They make great filler or analogs for different societal ills and worries at the time. They've been stand-ins for rampant capitalism, communism, any kinds of brain-dead sort of exemplars of our society in this day and age. They make great metaphors and analogs for so many different ills that, real or otherwise, may be plaguing society. But your classic old rotting shambler, while it is a classic, it gets old after a while. I mean, you all know the fatigue we've gone through or are still going through with zombie this, zombie that, zombie, I fell in love with a zombie, all the different zombie games. Hell, the Call of Duty Black Ops series is just such a ridiculous mess now that it's only online multiplayer and it has the zombie mode that just won't go away. Much like the undead hordes they keep throwing at you. They just don't stop. But for this kind of a game, for this kind of a setting, it's definitely something a little bit different for a tabletop game, and it can still be engaging. But you are going to want to change the zombies up. The same old shamblers should be present, but you need to switch it around. Use different kinds of variants that you might find in different films from different games, like the Left 4 Dead series, or State of Decay, or the stuff from Resident Evil, even the different kinds of mutants and the like. Bring those in, bring them in and make use of them. They will add different layers of depth and challenge to the game. Come up with your own variants too. Use those different examples as inspiration for coming up with your own unique kinds of zombies or mutated monsters that you want to have bearing down on the players. Trust me, it's absolutely worth it when the players go, "Oh crap!" But you see that little bit of panic in their eyes, but then you also get that moment of absolute enjoyment as they've encountered something new and have to try to figure out again, do they want to fight this thing? Do they want to try to skirt around it? Any number of solutions or possibilities that you are forcing them to try to come up with by presenting them with this unique challenge. A lot of them are going to go with the combat option and try to fight the thing, but your mileage may vary depending on your group. Also, when you're doing these encounters and setting everything up, change the terrain and the situations that the players are in. A burning building with lots of zombies swarming through it is going to be much more exciting than just, well, they're wandering their way through a warehouse. Granted, a warehouse full of different kinds of boxes and debris can present its own unique and interesting challenges. Who knows how many dead might be lurking in the piles or beneath or inside of boxes. How they got there, maybe think about it a little bit, but there's plenty of ways that you could easily explain in a way and set all that up. But one other thing that I should mention here is that you should set down the rules on how the zombification process works early on. Is it just a bite or a scratch that's necessary to infect them, or is everybody in the world already infected, a la The Walking Dead? Having this figured out early is great, because if you're going to go more the Resident Evil route, where it's 2 or 3 different strains of viruses that are producing these horrifically mutated creatures as well as kicking out zombies, well then, make sure that information gets communicated somehow. The characters, the players, don't need to know exactly what's causing it. They're going to deduce pretty readily that it's some kind of plague, some virus or disease, but they don't need to know the exact process behind it. They don't need to know the origins of the disease. That can be part of the mystery that's wrapped up in the game, is figuring out where this came from, how to stop it, or at the very least, punish the people responsible, assuming they're still alive. So, plenty of different avenues that you could go down and take the story along and present some really unique and engaging activities for your players to go through. Now, here coming up on this next slide, you'll see I've got the Speed Freak variant. The idea that I have in mind for my own zombie survival setting is that the chemical interaction with the drugs in the infected system, on top of this highly mutagenic disease, will produce an extremely aggressive running zombie type. They have a great deal of adrenaline and other chemicals in their system from the massive amounts of drugs they've been taking, so they just go non-stop. They just keep booking it to the point that their hands and their feet, as they're tearing and clawing and running through everything, get reduced down to jagged bones. Their fingers become sharpened nails, or they may even actually end up losing their hands in the process. But the process of them tearing into things, punching into stuff, leaves the forearm bones just these ragged, jagged edges that are just absolutely deadly, that just shear and serrate their way through clothing, armor, flesh. Well, armor might be a bit tricky depending on the kind, but point is that they run fast. Their barehanded attacks will deal 1d6 plus their strength modifier and damage, causing critical hits on a 19 to 20 for double damage. Now, that's not super intimidating in and of itself, but the fact that it's a running, sprinting zombie with basically 2 stabbing implements stuck at the end of its arms definitely gives the players a different kind of visual. It's basically a meth head zombie is what it boils down to, and that should make your players kind of go, oh no, just a little bit, especially if you have a pack of these things running after them. It'd be absolutely great. And you can use this kind of idea to change things up from body type to body type, different chemical or disease interactions happening inside of a human body. And I know I'd said this already before, but make sure when you're making your own variants, borrow from so many other sources. I can't emphasize this point enough. I had to put it in here twice, along with the next point, that environmental hazards are going to add layers of opportunity for you and for your players. This goes in with the whole terrain thing that I mentioned before, but it bears repeating again. Put in all kinds of environmental hazards, like the burning buildings, or even a sinking ship that's swarming with the undead. Can you imagine the amount of panic on the players' faces when they realize they need to get to that lifeboat, but on and around the lifeboat are plenty of other zombies, along with a couple of unique variants? It's going to present an interesting challenge, one where they are forced to have to burn through a good number of their supplies, or a player can have a heroic moment, draw the attention of the zombies, and take them down a different direction. chances are they wouldn't survive such a moment, but if they do, that person gets to go down as a hero and a goddamn legend. Hell, even if they don't survive, that's going to be a character that the other players, that the entire table remembers for a long time. And that's the kind of moment that you can easily and readily produce here with the zombie apocalypse setting. But zombies, the undead, these are not the only things that your players can encounter. They are going to be running into other survivors. Now, bringing in different kinds of survivors gives you the opportunity to create a variety, a veritable myriad and buffet of NPCs for the players to interact with. You can create so many different groups and communities of survivors for your players to just to explore the world with, or to deal with, however the situation gets presented. This will add a familiar type of challenge to the players, but with the post-apocalypse of the setting, it will feel unique and magnified, because they will have opportunities to trade with friendly groups of survivors. And combat, for those that are hostile, provides an opportunity for them to earn even more gear and supplies, or possibly expend a great deal in fighting with them. Maybe they come up short and the fight was hard, but this group of survivors that they ended up being hostile with just did not have a whole lot of resources. Maybe they had a great deal of skill to make good use of what little they did have. A very minimalist, survival-oriented kind of group, or just a group stuck in a crap situation. Either way, the players could end up wiping out, 5, 6, 12 people, and then come to find out they didn't really have a whole lot between a lot of them. They still may come out of it with some gear, but definitely not worth the cost in lives and the expenditure of their own resources. And then after this, as time goes on, encounters with other survivors should become more dangerous. The idea being this harsh world that the players are having to exist in is naturally going to be weeding and winnowing out those who cannot make it. There may be some who could have made it had they been equipped with the right gear or supplies. They just ended up on their last legs. But as time goes on, all the other survivors are gaining more experience, developing their own survival skills, their combat skills, whatever abilities they may have available to them are going to be made great and regular use of, and you should reflect that by occasionally leveling up some of the different survivor communities, leveling up the different gangs of raiders, or surviving military or police units, or whatever groups and communities have survived. They are going to become more and more battle hardened and present that greater level of challenge for the players. Also, for this setting, most forms of currency are going to be worthless pretty damn fast. It's going to be replaced by barter systems. Now, I should mention there's a lot of survivalists out there. I mean, I live in Montana. I've met plenty just walking around through Missoula's Walmart, and a lot. It still boggles my mind that so many people insist, oh, when the government collapses, you're going to want all the gold and silver that you can get your hands on. Gold and silver is where it's at. It's like, well, maybe eventually after a couple of years when things start to kind of rebuild, just because, we're humans, we tend to live in tribal or communal groups, we tend to build things back up. We like having order and structure, and currency helps provide a certain sense of order and structure, and gold and silver may well be useful in that. But in the initial stages of collapse, or in the immediate aftermath of disaster, nobody gives a shit about gold and silver or paper money. What they care about are things like toiletries, toilet paper, shaving kits, brushing their teeth. They care about cigarettes, alcohol, food, basic things, basic creature comforts become incredibly valuable, and little luxuries like cigarettes, like brushing their teeth, take on immense value. Huge. So the initial barter systems that come about, at the very least, are going to be revolving around things that are going to be used a lot or with regularity. So food, water, ammunition, fuel, all these different trade goods and creature comforts. Well, they're not trade goods now, but in this kind of a setting, again, things like candy, chocolates, any kind of just anything that might give a little bit of joy or have that feeling of creature comfort will be incredibly valuable and a very valuable trade tool for the players. It can even be, you can even make some of these items a valuable thing for the characters themselves, because say they have a little bit of creature comfort, they found a package of toilet paper that is entirely intact, big supply. They're going to be in it for a couple of weeks. Group of 4, 6 survivors, and they find enough to keep them, clean for a month. Well, I'd call that a month of morale bonuses, and also if they happen to draw any disaster cards, so it's like, disease outbreak, maybe consider throwing it away and not inflicting it with the players, because hey, you know what? You've been keeping your camp clean, that toilet paper has come in handy, you've got your latrine dug out and placed properly away, and you've been disposing the toilet paper has made disposal of waste much easier. You don't have to worry about disease. So that gives the toilet paper and all these other little things an inherent sense of value, and that inherent sense of value lends itself well towards this different look at an economic system that will be forming and taking place in the midst of a zombie apocalypse. Now, you don't have to punish yourself and start tracking rates of value real closely. You're not tracking the post-apocalyptic market share of toilet paper and toothpaste. The different things that are needed and valued are bound to fluctuate from place to place and from community to community based on what different groups of survivors need. In more urban centers, where one, there's probably a higher population of zombies just because there's a higher population of people, and two, there's not a whole lot of space for growing food and the like. Raiding grocery stores, department stores for whatever dried, canned goods, or just non-perishable food items will bring the difficulty in doing that will just give food an inherent value, especially since there's a lack of growing space for food inside a lot of urban centers. So food would be an incredibly valuable trade item in those instances. So would ammunition. Having the firepower necessary to deal with frequent or very frequent zombie hordes or just zombie incursions, whatever the case may be, having the firepower to deal with that, having weaponry, or even just being able to hire out a group of wandering survivors to help deal with or clear out some of the numbers of zombies, that will be very valuable for most any community existing inside of a city. But you go out into the countryside, more room for growing food, possibly even cattle out there. Those food and cattle may not have quite the same value. Certainly it will still be valuable because people need to eat, people need clean water to survive, and the animals themselves turn their hides into leather, ropes. You can make tools, so many different tools out of the remains, the bones, the guts, the sinew, all of that stuff can be put to use. So they may have some degree of manufacturing, but they will still need other supplies in order to facilitate that. So different things will hold a different value based on the needs of the very many different communities. And having a basic idea of what that might look like ahead of time will help you a long way, save you a whole lot of trouble if you just have that sort of worked out a little bit. Now, that basically wraps up encounters for now. Next time around, I'm hoping to talk a little bit more about different kinds of loot and how to structure it and set it up. And, well, we're already playing around in a setting where we're accepting the undead and different mutated monsters, or just different variations of undead resulting from mutating strains of the disease interacting with the different chemical compositions or chemical trace chemicals left inside the human system that creates different variants. Why not still take it a step further and allow some different unique items to come about. Items that for well, depending on how realistic you want to be. We will talk about this later, but basically I'm talking about weapons that are more effective against zombies or effective against certain kinds of advisors. Advisors. Survivors. Pardon me. I think that's a good cue for me to end this video. We'll wrap it up here for now. You already know what to do. If you liked it, subscribe and hit the like button, and we'll be happy to have you down here at the Gamer's Den. Even if you didn't, please let me know down below what you didn't like. I'm always happy to get that feedback and keep improving the channel here. But with that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. You guys have yourselves a good night.